two men stand overlooking an empty field as the wind swept through the open air. His name was Suho Kim, well, not here. In this world he went by Lloyd Frontera. And this was where his story began. Lloyd twirled a shovel in his hand before slamming it into the ground with theatrical flair. A pulse of blue light erupted from the point of impact, quickly spreading outward and enveloping the entire field. Glowing lines traced across the air, forming what looked like massive blueprints, an intricate three-dimensional schematic of a city taking shape right before their eyes. And so began the tale of an ordinary civil engineering student who transformed a world one plan, one step, one shovel at a time. Lloyd called out to the man beside him, Javier. With a glint in his eye, Lloyd declared that everything before them was money, and then let out a laugh more fitting for a villain than the story's protagonist. Javier stared at him, completely unfazed, and dryly remarked that his master had clearly lost his mind. The story starts just a few years ago in a small town in the country. A notification appears stating that someone has been chosen to have a random wish granted by the Absolute. It congratulates the recipient with a cheerful burst of applause, as if the system was trying its best to be encouraging. A man lies face down on the ground, staring at a glowing blue screen, still reading the notifications from earlier. It goes on to tell him he is now a character in Night of Blood and Iron. He lays there thinking. He knows the name. It was the book he read just last night before going to sleep. Another notification follows, wishing him good luck and saying he's got this, with a burst of celebratory confetti. His thoughts start to race. A wish? Good luck with what? Realization sets in. This is one of those tropes, the kind where someone ends up inside a novel. Then it hits him. He's face down in the dirt, on a road. He struggles to his feet, shivering from the cold. A sharp pain shoots through his jaw, and he quickly realizes he can't move his mouth. Just then, a notification pops up, informing him that he's dislocated his jaw from sleeping on the ground. With a grunt of frustration, he slaps the screen away, feeling like the notification is taunting him. He scowls, already convinced the system is getting way too much enjoyment out of his misery. He stands there for a moment, trying to make sense of it all. As he wonders what character he could possibly be, he presses a hand to his jaw and winces, carefully setting it back into place. A guy who wakes up with a sore jaw after a dirt nap in the middle of nowhere. Who else could it be? Master Lloyd, a voice calls out from behind, calm and direct, and mentioning that he's been looking for him. He turns, not entirely sure why anyone would be out here in the middle of nowhere looking for him. A man approaches, silver hair faintly catching the light, dressed in a crisp blue coat with an ornate sword at his side. The look is familiar. He recognises the character right away. Javier Asrahan. In the book, Javier was a renowned swordsman, but before that, he served as a low-ranking knight under a country lord, Arcos Frontera. That name ties everything together. The eldest son of that house was Lloyd, which means he's him, the hooligan of House Frontera. His face twists with rage as he shouts it, the words tearing out before he can stop himself, echoing into the empty countryside. Lloyd, still in shock, just stares at Javier. Javier looks back, unbothered, then comments that he never called him a hooligan. With a slight smirk, he adds that it's good to see he's at least self-aware. A notification pops up, noting that Javier's mood has improved. Lloyd doesn't even look at it. He mutters that he noticed, and tells it to shut up already. Later, back at the manor, the two sit near the fire. Javier is calmly stoking the flames while Lloyd remains wrapped in a blanket, still shivering. Javier glances over and asks if he seriously doesn't remember how he ended up like that. Then he lays it out. Apparently, Lloyd started drinking in the afternoon, got completely drunk, wrecked the furniture at the local pub, and passed out on the road while trying to stumble home. Lloyd, still half buried under the blanket, thinks that actually sounds about right for a hooligan. Javier tells him that his father had sent him out to look for him, apparently out of concern. Even if he was a hooligan, he was still the Lord's son, and if he died on the road with his jaw hanging loose, his father would have been sad. Lloyd glances at him, thinking Javier seems to be enjoying this a little more than necessary. The fire crackles quietly in the hearth. Lloyd, still bundled in the blanket, thinks the room is freezing. It could really use some underfloor heating, but this was a medieval fantasy after all. Javier stands and says he must return to report back to his father. Lloyd calls out, asking if his family has a lot of debt. Javier pauses for a moment, but doesn't give him a real answer, only brushing it off with a vague remark before leaving the room. Left alone, Lloyd sits in silence, still wrapped in the blanket. He knows exactly where this story is going. Just last night, cramped in his tiny boarding house room, he'd read the final chapter. He lets out a long sigh. His parents fall for a scam run by a local con man and lose everything. After that, they take their own lives. Lloyd ends up on the streets and eventually drinks himself to death. The thought surges through him all at once. He jumps to his feet, fists clenched in frustration. If everything was already decided, if he was just going to live the same miserable life all over again, then what was the point of any of this? He thinks back to the moment he first woke up in this world, the absolute, whatever that was supposed to be. And what kind of wish had he made that would drop him into a life with such a miserable fate? The next morning, his mother approaches him, clearly worried, and brings up the events from the night before. Lloyd, still feeling a bit unsteady, stands there quietly. He may not have been the one who caused the chaos, but he's the one living in the aftermath. So it's his problem now. She urges him to go to the pub and make things right. Lloyd sighs. It's not like he caused the mess himself, but someone had to deal with it. He agrees to go. His mother looks caught off guard. Javier glances at her, then back at Lloyd, like he's double-checking that he actually heard what he thinks he did. A notification appears, stating that confusion levels are currently high. Lloyd looks at the notification and thinks, was agreeing to apologise really that unbelievable? Or did they expect him to burn the pub down instead? The view shifts to the small, quiet town as Lloyd makes his way toward the pub. Along the street, a man is loading hay onto a cart. He glances up, then freezes. His eyes land on Lloyd and Javier walking side by side. Without hesitation, the man drops into a crouch and hides behind the wagon, curling up into a ball, clearly hoping Lloyd won't see him. Lloyd slows as he approaches, catching sight of the not-so-well-hidden figure behind the cart. He pauses, glances at the poorly hidden figure, then continues on, still a little confused. As he walks through the town, the reaction is immediate. People scatter at the sight of him. Some rush indoors, others cross the street entirely, avoiding eye contact like their lives depend on it. Lloyd glances around, brows drawing together as the confusion deepens. A child peeks through a window, curious about the sudden commotion, only to be yanked back by a parent who warns him not to make eye contact. The shutters slam, closed a second later. A notification appears. The villagers absolutely detest you. Lloyd gives the message a flat look and thinks to himself that yes, he'd already figured that part out. Continuing down the street, Lloyd glances at Javier and asks why he's still following him. Javier replies, calm as ever, that his father ordered him to escort Lloyd, just to make sure there were no repeats of yesterday. Lloyd blinks, genuinely surprised. What would he need an escort for? Javier clarifies, in his usual dry tone, that he's not here to protect Lloyd. He's here to protect the villagers from him. Lloyd pauses, eyebrows raised, then mutters to himself that he's being treated like some kind of gangster. He sighs. Maybe it was time to fix his reputation. At this rate, if he really did end up a beggar, he might at least want a shot at getting food and a warm drink out of it. No, he corrects himself. That's the wrong mindset. If he could just sort out the family's debt, he wouldn't have to live on the streets at all. He could stay right where he was, live out a cushy life as a baron, and actually make it to old age. He pulls up the screen in front of him, hoping there's something, anything, that might help him in this situation. And there it is. He does have a skill. 2, in fact. 1 passive, human scum. 1 activated, rowdy drunkard. His face twists into anger as he stares at the screen, jaw tight, and swipes at it with clear irritation, like the whole thing was some bad joke. Javier, walking quietly beside him, spares him a glance and wonders why Lloyd suddenly looks like he's fighting with the air. Javier calls out, motioning back toward the building Lloyd had just walked past, and reminds him of his promise to apologise. Lloyd explains he was just lost in thought, which is why he walked right past the pub without noticing. But Javier gives him a serious look. He doesn't say anything, just watches him, silently wondering if Lloyd really plans to go through with it. The look makes Lloyd nervous. He flusters under the weight of it, fumbling through his words until Javier sighs deeply and suggests they head in. Before he can finish, Lloyd's already reaching for the door, pushing it open without hesitation. Javier pauses at that. Strange. Ever since last night, Lloyd's been acting different, like someone else entirely. Lloyd steps into the pub. The damage is still everywhere. Tables lie broken, chairs overturned, wall decorations barely hanging. He walks straight up to the pub owner, bows his head, and asks, sincerely, for forgiveness. The pub owner's response is immediate. He jumps back into a defensive stance, hands up and trembling. A notification pops up. The pub owner has assumed the position of extreme high alert. The man begs him not to cause a scene. Lloyd, still bowing, blinks. Apparently, being polite is just making things worse. So he adjusts his tone and posture, deciding to act a little more like the scumbag everyone's expecting, just to put the man at ease. He straightens up, shrugs a little, and casually says something that vaguely resembles an apology. Another notification appears. Your apology does not seem genuine. Lloyd grits his teeth. Of course it doesn't, but he had to do something. The bartender, still clearly afraid, mutters that it's fine, more out of fear than forgiveness. Now walking back through town, Lloyd looked annoyed. He muttered that even though he apologised, the pub owner hadn't seemed happy at all. Javier, walking calmly beside him, replied that it was to be expected. Lloyd had destroyed everything in the place. An apology wasn't going to magically fix any of it. Lloyd frowned. Fair enough. But if words weren't enough, how could he repay the owner? He didn't have any money. What else did he have to offer? Javier added that the owner's mother had fallen ill after the harsh winter. With the damage to the pub on top of that, things must be difficult for him now. Lloyd thought back. The place had felt cold. One fireplace in that open space wasn't nearly enough. And elderly people couldn't handle the cold as well as others. Then it hit him. He stopped in his tracks. His expression shifted like something had just snapped into place, eyes wide, frozen mid-step. A light bulb moment. Blueprints began to take shape in his mind, lines of green energy sketching out the schematic right before his eyes. Heated floors. If he could build those here, in this world, they'd sell for sure. And there was no way the original Lloyd, the hooligan, would have come up with something like this. But he could. Suho Kim could. In his old life, he majored in civil engineering. He'd built a house by himself during his military service. He'd worked on construction sites, spent years learning exactly how things went together. He had the knowledge. And if he played his cards right, he could use it to clear the family's debt. He spun around and shouted to Javier that they were going back to the pub. Javier raised an eyebrow and asked why. But Lloyd didn't slow down. He walked with purpose now, eyes locked forward, voice steady. Today, he said, he was going to get his first order. A notification chimed. Your true journey has begun. The RP system has been unlocked. You can now earn RP by improving your relationships with other characters. Lloyd stared at the glowing message, still trying to wrap his head around it. The RP system, relationship points. He wasn't sure how it worked yet, but if this was the first step toward turning things around, then he was all in. Lloyd looks over at Javier and notices something new. There's a floating screen above his head. Taking a closer look, he realises it's displaying Javier's approval rating. It's currently sitting at -30. Not exactly a surprise. This was Lloyd, after all. Hoping to bump it up a little, he decides to throw out a compliment. He tells Javier he's a handsome man. Javier, completely unfazed, responds flatly that he already knows. Lloyd watches in disbelief as the rating ticks down another point. He gets flustered. That dropped it? He sighs and turns away, muttering to himself that there really are no shortcuts to fixing relationships. We now return to the pub. Lloyd arrives looking unusually serious. He's prepared a contract, and he's now reading the terms aloud to the bartender. Once finished, he places the document on the table and asks him to sign. The pub owner just stares at him, like Lloyd must really think he's some kind of fool. A notification pops up. The pub owner is suspicious of you. Lloyd bemoans his reputation. Of course, no one would trust the infamous hooligan of House Frontera. Another notification chimes in. The pub owner is using the skill Stonewall Heart. Lloyd slumps a little. He can't afford to lose this chance. If being reasonable isn't working, then maybe it's time to channel his inner hooligan. He straightens up and puts on his best threatening face, telling the pub owner they'd be seeing a lot more of each other and that he should start trusting him. To his shock, the pub owner signs on the spot. A new notification appears, casually calling him a garbage human being. Lloyd stares at it, then grumbles that he didn't have much of a choice. Still, he did it. He actually got his first order. Grinning, he rolls up the contract, stuffs it into his coat, and tells the owner he made a smart choice. Javier watches from the side, his expression caught somewhere between disgust and curiosity. We cut back to the outside behind the pub. Javier calls out to Lloyd, asking why he's now resorting to threatening the pub owner, and whether this is just another round of him causing trouble. Lloyd turns his head and gives Javier a flat, disapproving glance, then says he's not being reasonable, and asks if he's ever heard of cognitive distortion. Javier tilts his head slightly, thrown by the term, and asks what that even means. Lloyd explains that people expect you to behave the same way you always have, that people are prejudiced. Javier replies without hesitation that it's not prejudice. Experience just teaches you to judge someone based on their actions. That's called common sense. Lloyd insists that people's minds can change and says he'll prove it. He's going to make them smile. Javier stares at him for a long moment. Lloyd had never spoken like this before, and now he was talking about making people smile. He honestly wasn't sure what was more surprising, that Lloyd had said it, or that he sounded like he meant it. Lloyd starts digging and tells Javier he'll begin with the pub owner and his mother. He'll make them smile first. He figures this will be the perfect foundation for profit and progress. He starts digging, a grin forming as he gets to work. Javier watches as the days go by. Bit by bit, something starts to take shape. A small structure, slowly forming. Then one day, Lloyd is flat on the ground, completely drained. He thinks to himself that his body is too weak to keep up with the demands of construction. Javier notes that he's making quick progress. Lloyd snaps back that he's been at it for a week already. Javier looks at the progress again. He can't believe it. Lloyd is actually building something. How did he learn this? Is he really going to follow through with the contract? The hooligan, Lloyd Frontera? He looks over again. Lloyd is now struggling to lift an axe, hands shaking just trying to stay upright. As he swings, barely able to keep hold of it, Javier steps in and grabs the axe mid-motion. He takes it from him calmly and asks what needs to be done. Lloyd tells him he needs small cuts, about 1 finger thick, and gives the precise measurements. Javier walks over to the logs, tosses a few into the air, and in a blur of motion, slices them down to exact size. Each piece drops neatly to the ground. Lloyd can only watch with his jaw hanging open, then gives him a shaky thumbs up. This guy really is the character who becomes the master swordsman in the book, he thinks, still amazed. Who needs machinery when you've got precision and speed like that? He walks up behind Javier and places a hand on his shoulder, looking unusually serious. Then he breaks into a wide smile and tells him he should help with the digging once he's done with the chopping. Javier doesn't even turn to look at him. Irritated, he thinks that after all that, Lloyd should be thanking him, not assigning more work, that man is truly hopeless. A notification appears. Javier regrets helping you. Lloyd leans in with a mischievous grin and tells Javier that he knows what he's thinking. That Javier is curious, wondering if this is all just some elaborate scam. And if he really wants to find out how it ends, then helping might get him there faster. Javier admits, at least to himself, that Lloyd isn't entirely wrong. He's changed more than expected in just a few days, but even so, after all the selfish things Lloyd's done over the years, how could he possibly trust him? Still, the two begin digging side by side. Eventually Lloyd lifts his shovel, gives it a twirl, and slams it into the ground with flair, declaring that the construction is complete. Javier looks at the plaque now hanging on the wall and asks what the symbols mean. Lloyd tells him it's his logo. Javier stares at it. He doesn't get it. Lloyd, still smiling, tells him that now that the work is done, maybe they should go and find out what kind of con he has in store for the pub owner. Javier looks at him with no expression, maybe just trying to hide how curious he actually is. We cut back to the house Lloyd had built. Inside, the pub owner and his mother are seated comfortably. The mother is lying on the warm floor, eyes closed and content. The pub owner is speechless. His mother tells him it feels lovely, warm all the way through. Her joints feel relaxed for the first time in ages. The pub owner can hardly believe what he's seeing. Lloyd stands nearby, smiling to himself. He thinks that for the people of this world, this must feel like magic. The pub owner turns to Lloyd, ecstatic, and thanks him, saying he hasn't seen his mother smile like this in a long time. Javier can't hide his emotion this time. He's in shock. Lloyd actually made them smile, just like he said he would. What is going on? First, his speech and manner changed. Now this? Now he works hard. He keeps promises. He follows through for other people. There's no way Lloyd Frontera would do something like this. And yet, it happened. Seeing them like this. Maybe that's what matters most right now, he thinks. A notification appears. Lloyd's approval rating with Javier has improved by 2 points. He's also earned 36 RP for improving a relationship with a key character. Lloyd just smiles and turns to Javier, clearly gloating, and says he's thinking it. Lloyd might not be a total garbage human after all, huh? Javier replies without blinking. As far as he's concerned, Lloyd's still garbage. Lloyd just grins and says he knows Javier's starting to think it. Javier snaps back that he is not. Lloyd doesn't seem fazed. He's clearly pleased, even though he spent money on timber. He's confident it'll pay off. This house will serve as a show model to help sell the idea to everyone else. A few days later, a line has formed outside the house Lloyd built. He's set up a station just out front, complete with a desk, a chair, and a stack of contracts ready to go. People step out of the house impressed, commenting on how warm it is inside. The crowd waiting in line watches curiously. And Lloyd. He's already working the scene, calling out to passers-by, letting them know they could have one just like it. He offers different models, custom layouts, even remodeling options for existing homes. One man hesitates, unsure. A notification pops up. The villagers don't trust you. Lloyd frowns, then puts on his best hooligan face and tries to pressure the man into signing. He insists it's an amazing deal. Before the man can answer, someone else approaches. Lloyd glances up and freezes. It's his father. His father walks up and asks what Lloyd is doing here. Lloyd doesn't answer right away. He glances at the screen. His father's approval rating sits at -20. He stays quiet, eyes on his father, watching him carefully. Because if there was anyone harder to win over than the villagers, it was him.